A stranger offered me $100 to take a package to an address downtown. At the drop-off, 6 police cars surrounded me. The man approached me outside the gas station, where I'd been applying for a cashier position that paid $9 an hour. He was mid-50s, wore an expensive suit, and carried a leather briefcase that probably cost more than my rent. He asked if I needed quick money. I had $11 in my account, and my landlord had posted an eviction notice 3 days ago, so yes, I needed money. He said he'd pay me $100 cash to deliver a package to an address downtown, gave me the sealed manila envelope, and handed me 5 20s before I could ask questions. The address was 1523 Fletcher Street, apartment 8D. He said to knock 3 times and hand it to whoever answered. Simple courier work. I took the money because desperation makes you stupid. I'd been unemployed for 2 months after the warehouse where I worked closed without warning. My unemployment benefits had run out. I'd been selling plasma twice a week just to buy food. $100 was groceries, gas, maybe enough to negotiate with my landlord for another week. I didn't ask what was in the package. I should have. I drove my 15-year-old Civic with the check engine light permanently onto the address downtown. Fletcher Street was in a decent neighborhood, apartment buildings that looked recently renovated. I found 1523 and climbed to the 3rd floor. Apartment 8D had a black door with a peephole. I knocked 3 times as instructed. No one answered. I knocked again, louder. Still nothing. I was about to leave when I heard sirens. 6 police cars pulled up with lights flashing. Officers exited with weapons drawn. One of them shouted for me to put my hands up, to drop the package, to get on the ground. I froze, unable to process what was happening. An officer tackled me from behind before I could comply, slamming me face first into the hallway floor. The package flew from my hands. My arms were wrenched behind my back and handcuffs bit into my wrists. Someone was reading me my rights, but the words blurred together. I kept saying I was just delivering a package, that someone paid me to bring it here. They hauled me to my feet, and I saw the envelope had torn open when I dropped it. Photos had spilled out. Crime scene photos. A woman's body in what looked like a bedroom. Blood. Evidence markers. Photos that shouldn't exist outside a police investigation. An officer in plain clothes, Detective Lawrence Harmon, picked up the photos with gloved hands and stared at me. "Who sent you here with these?" I told him about the man at the gas station. Harmon asked for a description. I gave him what I could remember. 50s, gray hair, expensive suit, leather briefcase. Harmon exchanged looks with another detective. They searched me and found the $100. Harmon asked where I got the cash. I said from the man who hired me. He asked for the man's name. I realized I didn't have one. I'd taken money from a stranger to deliver a package without asking his name, without getting any information that could protect me now. They took me to the precinct in the back of a cruiser. At the station, they put me in an interrogation room with a metal table and 2 chairs bolted to the floor. The walls were beige and windowless. A camera mounted in the corner recorded everything. Harmon came in with a folder and a female detective he introduced as Detective Yolanda Price. They sat across from me and Harmon opened the folder. Inside were more copies of the photos from the package plus police reports. "Do you know who this woman is?" Harmon asked, sliding a photo across the table. I looked at the image. A woman in her 30s, blonde, lying in what appeared to be her bedroom. The photo was taken from above, showing the full crime scene. I'd never seen her before. I told them that. Price leaned forward. "This is Amanda Fisk. She was murdered 3 weeks ago in her apartment. Her case is still under active investigation. The photos you were carrying are copies of evidence photos that should only exist in our case file. Whoever gave you that package had access to restricted police documents." My stomach dropped. I'd been carrying stolen evidence. That made me an accomplice to something, though I wasn't sure what. I told them again about the man at the gas station, that I was just trying to make rent money. Harmon asked why I'd accepted $100 to deliver a package without knowing what was inside. I said, because I was desperate. Price asked if I'd delivered packages for this man before. No. Had I been in contact with him previously? No. Did I have his phone number? No. Did I get his license plate? No. I had nothing except a vague description and $100 that was now evidence. Harmon left the room and came back with a laptop. He pulled up surveillance footage from the gas station. The timestamp showed 2:15 p.m., approximately 3 hours before my arrest. The angle showed me standing by my car, then a man approaching. But the man's face was turned away from the camera the entire time. He'd positioned himself deliberately to avoid identification. The footage showed him handing me something, me looking at it, then him handing me cash. It looked exactly like a drug deal or some other illegal transaction. Harmon asked what the man had said to me word for word. I repeated the conversation as accurately as I could remember. He'd asked if I needed quick money, offered me $100 for a simple delivery, gave me the address and the package. That was it. No small talk, no names, nothing that would identify him. Price asked if I'd noticed anything distinctive about him. Scars, tattoos, jewelry, accent, unusual mannerisms. I tried to remember. He'd worn a watch. Expensive looking, but I couldn't describe it in detail. No visible tattoos, no accent I could identify. He'd been calm, professional, like he'd done this before. Harmon closed the laptop. Here's the situation. Someone gave you evidence from an active homicide investigation and directed you to deliver it to an apartment that doesn't exist. Apartment 8D at 1523 Fletcher Street belongs to a Melissa Wong, but she's been on vacation in Taiwan for the past month. Someone set up this entire scenario, and you walked right into it. I asked what they meant. Price explained that they'd received an anonymous tip 30 minutes before my arrival that someone would be delivering stolen evidence to that address. The tip included my vehicle description and license plate. They'd been waiting for me. I'd been set up. Someone had used me to move stolen evidence, then made sure I'd get caught with it. The question was why. Harmon asked if I'd made any enemies recently, anyone who'd want to frame me. I was unemployed and broke. My social circle had shrunk to almost nothing. I couldn't think of anyone who'd go through this much effort to hurt me. Price asked about my background. Had I ever been arrested? No. Any connection to law enforcement or the legal system? My sister Jenna was a paralegal, but I hadn't talked to her in months. We'd had a falling out over money I'd borrowed and couldn't pay back. Any connection to Amanda Fisk or her case? None that I knew of. I'd never heard her name before today. They left me alone in the room for over an hour. I sat there trying to piece together what had happened. Someone had stolen police evidence, hired me as an unwitting courier, then made sure I'd be arrested with it. But why use me specifically? Why not just dump the photos somewhere or send them anonymously? There had to be a reason I was chosen. A uniformed officer brought me water and a sandwich but wouldn't answer my questions. Finally, Harmon and Price returned. Harmon said, "We've verified you have no connection to Amanda Fisk or her case. Your story about the man at the gas station checks out in terms of timeline, but you're still in possession of stolen police evidence, which is a felony. We're going to hold you overnight while we investigate further." I asked about bail. Price said they'd set it in the morning, but given the seriousness of the charges, it wouldn't be low. I asked if I could make a phone call. They gave me 5 minutes. I called Jenna. We hadn't spoken since our fight 6 months ago, but she was the only person I knew who understood legal proceedings. She answered on the third ring. When I explained I'd been arrested, there was a long silence. Then she asked what I'd done. I gave her the abbreviated version. She said she'd make calls and see what she could find out, but her tone was skeptical. She thought I'd gotten myself into something stupid, which wasn't entirely wrong. They processed me into a holding cell with 3 other men. One was sleeping, one was muttering to himself, and one was a guy about my age named Dante, who'd been picked up for unpaid traffic tickets. Dante asked what I was in for. I said delivery of stolen evidence. He whistled and said that was serious time if they proved intent. I told him I hadn't known what I was carrying. He said that's what everyone says. The night was long and uncomfortable. I couldn't sleep on the metal bench. My mind kept replaying the moment I'd taken that package, the moment I'd decided $100 was worth not asking questions. In the morning, they took me to arraignment. The prosecutor was a woman named Emily Thornton, who requested $50,000 bail, arguing I was a flight risk with no ties to the community and facing serious felony charges. My public defender, an exhausted-looking man named Robert Chu, argued I had no criminal record and had cooperated fully with the investigation. The judge set bail at $25,000. I'd need to come up with $20,500 for a bail bond, money I absolutely didn't have. I was sent back to holding. Jenna came to see me that afternoon. We sat across from each other, separated by plexiglass, talking through phones that smelled like disinfectant. She'd researched my charges and looked worried. Possession of stolen police evidence carries up to 5 years. If they can prove you knew what you were carrying, it's worse. You need a better lawyer than a public defender. I told her I couldn't afford any lawyer. She was quiet for a moment, then said, I can't loan you money. Not after last time, but I can help in other ways. I'll do some digging into the case, see if there's something the police are missing. There's a reason someone chose you specifically for this. We need to figure out what it is. I asked if she believed I was set up. She said, I believe you're telling the truth. That doesn't mean the cops will or a jury. You need to give them something that leads to the real person behind this. After she left, I thought about what she'd said. The man at the gas station had chosen me for a reason. He'd known I'd be there applying for that job. How? The gas station was 30 minutes from my apartment. I'd seen the job posting online that morning and driven straight there. Unless someone had been watching me, tracking my movements, they couldn't have known I'd be at that specific location at that specific time, which meant I'd been under surveillance. That night, a guard came to my cell and said I had another visitor. I assumed it was Jenna, but instead they brought me to the same interview room where I'd met with Harmon and Price. Detective Harmon was there alone this time. He asked me to sit. We've been investigating Amanda Fisk's murder since it happened 3 weeks ago. She was a financial analyst who worked for Meridian Capital Group. According to her colleagues, she'd been acting paranoid in the weeks before her death. She told her best friend someone was following her. She'd changed her locks and installed extra security cameras. She was scared, but she wouldn't say who or why. Harmon pulled out a tablet and showed me more photos. These are screenshots from Amanda's security cameras the night she died. She let someone into her apartment willingly, someone she knew and trusted. The camera caught a partial view before it was disabled. The image showed a man's back, wearing what looked like an expensive suit. My breath caught. The build and clothing matched the man who'd hired me. I told Harmon that. He nodded slowly. We noticed the similarity. Here's what we think happened. Amanda discovered something at her work, something incriminating about someone powerful. That person had her killed and made it look like a robbery. But Amanda was smart. She'd made copies of whatever evidence she'd found and hidden it. The killer couldn't find it. And when they couldn't, they decided to create a different problem. They stole our evidence photos and used you to move them, knowing we'd arrest you, knowing it would muddy the investigation and make us focus on the wrong thing. I asked why they thought that. Price entered the room and took over. Because while we've been investigating you, someone broke into our evidence locker and took the actual physical evidence from Amanda's case. Her computer, her personal files, everything that might contain what she'd discovered. They used you as a distraction, and it worked. We had our best people watching you while someone else hit the evidence room. The theft had happened during my interrogation yesterday. While every detective in the building was focused on me and the stolen photos, someone had accessed the secure evidence locker and removed everything connected to Amanda Fisk's murder. The security footage from that area had been mysteriously corrupted. It was a professional job. Harmon said they were going to release me. The charges weren't being dropped, but I was being released on my own recognizance while they continued investigating. He gave me his card and made it clear I wasn't to leave the city. If I thought of anything else, or if the man from the gas station contacted me again, I was to call immediately. Outside the precinct, Jenna was waiting. She drove me home, and I noticed her checking the mirrors frequently. You think we're being followed? She asked. I said probably, either by the police or by whoever had set me up. At my apartment, the eviction notice was still on the door, but it felt like a trivial problem now. Inside, I found my place had been searched. Not trashed, but clearly gone through. Drawers were slightly open, papers were out of order, my laptop had been moved. Whoever had been here was looking for something. Jenna called the police. Officers came and took a report, but said, without proof of forced entry or missing items, there wasn't much they could do. After they left, Jenna and I searched carefully to see if anything had been taken. My laptop was still there, my cheap TV, even the $40 in emergency cash I kept in a drawer. Whoever had been here wasn't interested in robbery. They were looking for something specific. I remembered the $100 in bills the man had given me, now in police evidence. I wondered if there'd been something on those bills, some mark or serial number that meant something. Or maybe the money itself wasn't important. Maybe the entire transaction had been recorded and would be used for something later. I was a pawn in someone's game, and I didn't understand the rules. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Amanda Fisk, about her being so scared in the weeks before her death. She'd known someone was after her. She'd tried to protect herself. She'd failed. Around 2 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. An electronically distorted voice said, "You're asking questions you shouldn't ask. Stop looking into this, or you'll end up like Amanda." The call ended before I could respond. I immediately called Detective Harmon. He answered groggily, and I told him about the call. He said he'd have tech trace it, but warned these kinds of calls usually came from burner phones that were ditched immediately after. He asked if I recognized anything about the voice, any background noise, anything distinctive. I said no, just the threat. Harmon told me to be careful, to vary my routine, to let him know if I noticed anyone following me. After we hung up, I sat in the dark wondering how my life had gone from applying for minimum wage jobs to receiving death threats in less than 48 hours. The next morning, Jenna called. She'd been researching Meridian Capital Group, where Amanda had worked. The company specialized in wealth management for high-net-worth clients. Nothing seemed unusual about it on the surface, but Jenna had contacts from her paralegal work who'd heard rumors. Meridian had been under quiet investigation by the SEC for possible money laundering. The investigation had stalled out 6 months ago due to lack of evidence. Amanda had worked in their forensic accounting department. She would have had access to financial records that could prove illegal activity. Jenna said, "I think Amanda found evidence of the money laundering. She was going to blow the whistle. Someone at Meridian found out and had her killed. Then they realized she'd made copies of the evidence and hidden it. They couldn't find it, so they stole the police evidence to see if Amanda had told the police anything before she died. When they realized the police didn't have what they were looking for, they used you to create chaos and buy time. It made sense, but didn't help me. I was still facing felony charges. I was still on someone's target list. I was still broke and unemployed with an eviction notice." Jenna said she'd keep digging. She had a friend who worked at the SEC who might be willing to talk off the record. 2 days later, I got a call from Detective Price. She asked me to come to the precinct. When I arrived, she took me to a conference room where Harmon was waiting with a man in a federal agent's suit. He introduced himself as Agent Kyle Brennan from the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. Agent Brennan said, "We've been investigating Meridian Capital for the past year. Amanda Fisk was our confidential informant. She'd agreed to wear a wire and gather evidence for us. 2 days before she was killed, she told her handler she'd found something big, something that would bring down several high-level executives and potentially expose a network of corrupt city officials who were helping launder money through city contracts. She was supposed to hand over the evidence at a meeting the next day. She never showed. We found out later she'd been murdered." Agent Brennan pulled out a file. Amanda was smart. She knew she was in danger. She told her handler she'd hidden copies of the evidence in case something happened to her. We've been trying to find it for 3 weeks. We believe whoever killed her is also looking for it, which explains the theft of police evidence and your involvement. They're desperate to find what Amanda hid before we do. I asked why they were telling me this. Harmon said, "Because we think Amanda left a clue about where she hid the evidence, and that clue might involve you." I'd never met Amanda Fisk. I'd never heard of her before my arrest. How could I possibly be connected to wherever she'd hidden evidence? Agent Brennan opened a laptop and showed me Amanda's phone records from the week before her death. "Amanda called your number 3 times. The calls were short, under 30 seconds, like she was getting voicemail each time. Do you remember receiving calls from an unknown number about 3 weeks ago?" I tried to remember, but 3 weeks ago, I'd been job hunting and desperate, ignoring most unknown numbers because they were usually debt collectors. I told them I didn't remember specifically, but I often let unknown calls go to voicemail. Agent Brennan asked to see my phone. I handed it over. He scrolled through my voicemail, found 3 messages from 3 weeks ago, all from the same unknown number. He played them on speaker. First message. "Hi, this is Amanda from Meridian Capital. I think we met at the coffee shop last week. I had a question about something you mentioned. Call me back." Second message. "It's Amanda again. Really need to talk to you about that thing you said. It's important. Please call me." Third message. Okay, I guess you're not getting these. I'm going to leave something for you at that place we talked about. You'll know where. I'd never met Amanda. I'd never been to a coffee shop with her. She'd called the wrong number, mistaken me for someone else. But she'd also left something for me somewhere. The question was where. Agent Brennan asked if any of this sparked a memory. I said no, but I was clearly the wrong person. Amanda had meant to call someone else. Price said, or she deliberately called a random number to throw people off. If she was being watched, she couldn't contact her real allies. So she created a fake connection to someone unrelated, you, and hid the evidence somewhere connected to that fake story. That way, anyone listening to her calls would waste time investigating you instead of finding the evidence. Harmon added, the man who hired you to deliver the package knew about these calls. He chose you because of them. He was testing whether you actually had the evidence, whether you knew where it was. When you delivered the package like an innocent courier, he knew you didn't have it. But he also knew we'd investigate you, find these voicemails, and start looking into your connection to Amanda. It's misdirection layered on top of misdirection. I asked what they wanted from me. Agent Brennan said they needed to retrace Amanda's last days and figure out where she might have hidden the evidence. The voicemail mentioned that place we talked about. Even though we'd never talked, somewhere in my daily routine, somewhere I went regularly, Amanda had hidden something. They asked about my schedule 3 weeks ago. Where had I been going regularly? I'd been job hunting, which meant I'd been to dozens of places. The gas station where I'd applied, multiple fast food restaurants, a temp agency, the unemployment office, the library where I'd used their computers to apply online. Any of those places could be what Amanda meant. We started systematically checking each location. The gas station had nothing hidden on their premises. The restaurant managers let us search their buildings with no results. The temp agency cooperated, but we found nothing. The unemployment office was a bust. Finally, we went to the public library. It was a large building with 3 floors, multiple reading rooms, study areas, computer labs. Amanda had been a member there. According to the librarian's records, she'd checked out 3 books the day before she died. I asked what books. The librarian pulled up the records. Corporate Finance Ethics, Whistleblower Protection Laws, and The Art of Hiding in Plain Sight. The last title seemed relevant. We found the book on the 3rd floor in the business section. Agent Brennan carefully paged through it while wearing gloves. Near the back, stuck between pages 187 and 188, was a USB drive. He bagged it as evidence. We went back to the FBI field office where Agent Brennan plugged the drive into a secure computer. It contained spreadsheets, bank records, email communications, and recorded phone calls. Amanda had documented everything. Meridian Capital had been laundering money for several criminal organizations through real estate investments. City officials, including 2 city council members and the deputy mayor, had been accepting bribes to approve zoning changes and overlook violations. The evidence showed a network of corruption worth tens of millions of dollars. Names, dates, account numbers, everything needed to bring criminal charges. Agent Brennan looked at me. This is what Amanda died for. This is what they've been desperately searching for, and they're going to know we found it soon. He was right. The next day, news broke that the FBI had arrested 6 executives from Meridian Capital, along with 2 city council members and the deputy mayor. The charges included money laundering, bribery, fraud, and in the case of the executives, conspiracy to commit murder. News coverage was extensive. Several stations mentioned that the evidence had been hidden by Amanda Fisk, the murdered whistleblower whose case had seemed unsolvable. They mentioned an unnamed individual who'd inadvertently helped locate the evidence. My name wasn't used, but anyone paying attention could figure out it was me. That night, someone shot at my apartment. 3 bullets came through my living room window while I was in the kitchen. Glass shattered and I dove to the floor. I called 911 and then Detective Harmon. Police arrived within minutes and found shell casings from a high-powered rifle on the roof of the building across the street. Harmon arrived shortly after and was furious. He said the FBI should have put me in protective custody the moment they found the USB drive. Agent Brennan arrived and agreed. They moved me to a safe house in a suburban neighborhood, a nondescript ranch home with bars on the windows and federal agents standing guard. Jenna brought me clothes and supplies. She looked scared for the first time since this started. People are getting arrested because of that USB drive. Powerful people who have resources and connections. They're going to come after you until they think you can't testify. I said I didn't even know what was on the drive, hadn't looked at the details. She said it didn't matter. I was a witness to finding it. I was connected to the case. I was a loose end. For 3 weeks, I stayed in that safe house. Agent Brennan visited regularly to update me on the case. The arrests were holding. The evidence was airtight. Several of the arrested individuals had started cooperating, naming others involved. The investigation was expanding. They'd identified the man who'd hired me to deliver the package. His name was Vincent Sawyer, a former police detective who'd been working as private security for Meridian Capital executives. He'd been arrested trying to flee to Mexico. He was being charged with evidence tampering, witness intimidation, and as an accessory to Amanda's murder. He'd been the one who'd stolen the police evidence photos and orchestrated my setup. He'd been following me for days before approaching me at the gas station, making sure I fit the profile of someone desperate enough to take the job without asking questions. Agent Brennan said Sawyer was cooperating now, trying to reduce his sentence. He'd given them information about who'd ordered Amanda's hit. It was Clayton Mercer, the CEO of Meridian Capital. Mercer had personally arranged the murder when he'd discovered Amanda was FBI informant. He'd had Sawyer handle the logistics and the cover-up. The murder charges against Mercer were solid. He was looking at life in prison. The trial was set for 6 months out. I was going to be a witness, which meant staying in protective custody until then. My life was on hold indefinitely. Jenna visited weekly, bringing news from the outside world. My apartment had been released from the crime scene, and my landlord had surprisingly not followed through on the eviction. Apparently, once news broke about my involvement in bringing down a corruption ring, public sentiment had shifted. Several news outlets had run stories about the unemployed man who'd accidentally helped expose a massive fraud scheme. Job offers had started coming in, legitimate ones from companies who'd seen the coverage. It was surreal. I'd gone from being unable to get a 9-hour cashier job to having multiple opportunities because I'd been set up as a patsy. The trial began in April, 8 months after I'd taken that package. The courtroom was packed with media and observers. Prosecutors methodically presented the evidence from Amanda's USB drive. They showed the money laundering schemes, the bribes, the communications proving everyone involved knew what they were doing. They played recordings of Clayton Mercer ordering the hit on Amanda. His voice was cold and businesslike, treating murder as just another corporate problem to solve. When it was my turn to testify, the defense attorney tried to paint me as an unreliable witness, someone who'd taken money to deliver a package without asking questions, someone whose involvement was suspicious. The prosecutor countered by walking through exactly how I'd been set up, how Sawyer had targeted me specifically because I was desperate and vulnerable, how the entire scheme had been designed to create chaos and buy time while they searched for Amanda's evidence. The jury listened carefully. They seemed to understand I'd been a pawn, not a participant. After 3 weeks of testimony from dozens of witnesses, the jury deliberated for 2 days. They came back with guilty verdicts on all counts for Clayton Mercer and most of his co-defendants. Mercer was sentenced to life without parole for ordering Amanda's murder. The other executives got sentences ranging from 15 to 30 years. Vincent Sawyer, who'd cooperated, got 12 years. The city officials who'd taken bribes got lighter sentences due to their cooperation, but their political careers were over. Justice had been served, though it had taken Amanda's death to achieve it. After the trial, I was released from protective custody. I returned to my apartment, which felt strange and unfamiliar after months away. Jenna helped me sort through the job offers and media requests. Several companies wanted to hire me for corporate compliance positions, betting that someone who'd been unknowingly used in a corruption scheme would be extra vigilant about preventing fraud. I accepted a position at a financial oversight firm making $65,000 a year, more money than I'd ever imagined earning. The work was interesting and felt meaningful. I was part of a team investigating corporate fraud cases, helping prevent what had happened to Amanda from happening to others. 6 months after the trial, I attended a memorial service for Amanda Fisk. Her parents had organized it, inviting everyone who'd worked to bring her killers to justice. Agent Brennan was there, along with Detectives Harmon and Price. Amanda's parents thanked me for helping find the evidence their daughter had died protecting. Her mother hugged me and said Amanda would have appreciated the irony of using a wrong number to hide the evidence that would eventually expose the truth. Standing at that memorial, looking at photos of Amanda when she was alive, I thought about how random chance had connected us. A wrong number, a desperate man at a gas station, a package delivered at exactly the wrong moment. None of it should have worked out the way it did. But Amanda had been smart enough to create layers of misdirection, to use the chaos of a murder investigation against the people who'd killed her. She'd trusted that eventually someone would figure out her clues. I'd been that someone, entirely by accident. 2 years after taking that package, I was promoted to senior investigator at my firm. I'd helped expose 3 other fraud schemes and recovered millions in stolen assets. I'd paid back Jenna everything I owed her, plus interest. I'd moved to a better apartment in a safer neighborhood. My life had completely transformed because I'd said yes to a stranger offering me $100 to deliver a package. The irony wasn't lost on me. The worst decision I'd ever made had led to the best outcome I could have imagined. But I never forgot that it had cost Amanda Fisk her life, that my redemption arc was built on her tragedy. I kept her photo on my desk as a reminder that fighting corruption was dangerous work, that whistleblowers risked everything to expose the truth. Whenever I felt discouraged by a difficult investigation, I looked at that photo and remembered why the work mattered. Amanda had died trying to reveal the truth. The least I could do was honor her sacrifice by continuing that fight. 3 years after the trial, I received a letter from Vincent Sawyer. He was in prison and wanted to apologize. He wrote that he'd been hired to make me look guilty, to create a distraction, but he'd never intended for me to be seriously harmed. He said he thought they'd just arrest me for a few hours and let me go once they realized I was innocent. He hadn't known they'd keep coming after me, that they'd shoot at my apartment, that they'd threaten my life. He was sorry. I didn't respond to the letter. His apology meant nothing. He'd still been willing to destroy an innocent person's life for money. That he hadn't anticipated all the consequences didn't absolve him. I threw the letter away and went back to work. The corruption case had led to reforms in city government and increased oversight of financial institutions. Multiple agencies had been created to prevent similar schemes. Amanda's death had led to systemic change. That mattered more than Vincent Sawyer's guilt or my forgiveness. Years later, I still sometimes think about that moment at the gas station, the stranger with the briefcase and the $100 bills. How close I came to saying no, to walking away, to missing my accidental role in exposing a massive fraud. How different my life would be if I'd been less desperate, if I'd asked more questions, if I'd been anywhere else that afternoon. But I also think about the choices that led me there. The layoffs, the poverty, the desperation that made me vulnerable to being used. That vulnerability wasn't unique to me. Thousands of people made decisions every day because they needed money to survive. Some of those decisions worked out, some didn't. I'd gotten lucky in the most unlikely way possible, and I'd spent every day since trying to pay that luck forward by protecting others from the people who'd tried to destroy me. If you enjoyed this, you'll definitely want to see the next ones too. So subscribe now and let me know your take in the comments.